So I'm going to talk today to a few things. I'm mostly going to be talking about how video games connect to desire and love. I'll explain why those are similar, related things in the course of the talk. And finally, I will talk about politics and what I see as the important political issues surrounding new developments in gaming, AI, and things like online dating. My general kind of consensus my strong feeling is that video games are transforming what it means to desire. They are transforming our empathies, emotions, feelings, friendships in a way which, say, Hollywood cinema probably did in the 60s, 70s. And so on. So, it's easy to say that Hollywood cinema didn't just, respond to what people wanted. It transformed an entire culture. It transformed how they think, feel, desire, and relate to each other. And my belief is that video games are the key kind of cultural medium which is taking us through a similar process again today. So I think that over the last 10, 15 years and going forward into the next 10 years, we're seeing video games as this kind of force which are really transforming what it basically means to be a desiring human being in this day and age. So I hope to kind of convince you of that in the course of the talk and then explain or introduce why I think this is politically concerning or how we need to approach this in a kind of political way. The prehistory of, I think I want to start by talking about this kind of concept of let's say, gamifying love. And then I will talk more abstractly about how I think games relate to desires. So gamifying love, it means that love and relationships are increasingly becoming like a game in our social life, online and in technology. And the kind of prehistory of this idea is probably pickup artistry, which people really came to be aware of in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. In 2005, you have this book called The Game, which is basically an instructional manual for misogynistic bros to go clubbing and use a particular set of skills to pick up women, right? So it's completely kind of patriarchal production, and the idea was that women can basically be played like a game. That's why it's called The Game. And this book would instruct young males in how to play the game of love or of women. Now that has actually developed over the last 15 years, in my opinion, into a rather kind of scary dystopian realization. And we have a variety of things which are really concretely turning love into a kind of game. One preliminary point is to say this is true on the level of new technology that I'm going to talk about. It's also true on a corporate level. I'm not really going to talk about that, but we increasingly see hookup sites and things like these that you can see on the screen, which is a virtual dating simulator, owned by the same companies who own video gaming. I mean, this is an example of both. It's a virtual dating simulator, so it's a game and a kind of dating program. But a company like Beijing Kunlun Tech, one of the bigger video game producers in China, recently bought Grindr, which is a gay hookup site which was private until 2016. And you're actually seeing on a corporate level that the technology which controls people's love and relationships is owned by the same corporations who are making video games. So you can see on a corporate level there's a connection between video games and love. Now you can also see it on a more practical, visible level in our social life. Okay? Things like VR girlfriends, okay? Like the Japanese game Summer Lesson is probably the most shocking. You put the headset on, you get a virtual girlfriend, and you play her like a game. If you complete the game correctly, you acquire the gratification, presumably, from the virtual girlfriend on screen. Another interesting example is the AI chatbot Replica, which is it just looks like a WhatsApp conversation. You download it, and it basically learns from you how to give you what you need as a friend or lover. It's got a kind of fascinating history because the designer of Replica lost her best friend, and she tried to create an AI to replace him. But the purpose of the AI is that it only learns from you. Right, so it records it looks into your mobile history, everything that you've done, and it works out precisely what you want from a friend or lover, and then it learns from your responses how to give you exactly what you want. Then we also have the massive proliferation of mobile dating simulators. This one is an example of that, where you basically go through a video game, the purpose of which is to convince the digital female, or in very rare cases male, that they should kind of date you, or so on. So what you're seeing is a trend which is anticipated in this kind of misogynistic culture of the game in the early 2000s, which has now become a kind of reality which is being used by millions and millions of people, which is increasingly encouraging people to see love in this kind of gamified way. Yeah, you're now looking at Pokemon Go, which I think offers us a more abstract way of thinking about this. These new technologies, Pokemon Go is designed by a company called Niantic, which is a subsidiary of Google, Google were using it in the years before Google Now, which has emerged just now. So Pokemon Go came out in the summer of 2016. Google Now has come out the last year. My belief is that this is part of a kind of testing phase in Google's project to try to manipulate people's desires. Okay, so relates to the smart city and new ways in which people can be controlled in their city space on the level of desire. So one thing that's quite different from my approach to other people, I'm often talking about WeChat, Alibaba, Google Now, things like that. And whereas most people are very focused on the surveillance issue, the data protection issue, which I think is a very huge issue as well, my focus is the way in which these things are transforming people's desires. They work on the level of desire. So you don't want a Pikachu already, or a Clefairy, but when the object of desire appears on your screen, suddenly you want to go and get to it, and the app has already a mapped out plan of how you will get to the object that you want. Okay, so in a certain way I'm using the Clefairy or Pikachu as a model for other objects of desire. I think there's a similarity between the way we go about getting a lover, the way we go about getting a friend, or the way we go about getting a burger, and the way we go about getting a Pikachu. Because we're in an age where huge corporations place the object of desire in front of you on a screen and already have mapped out and planned exactly how you will get to that object and what kind of gratification you'll get from it. Like for example, predictive applications like Google Now could be one of the most scary examples of this, and I think finishes my first point about technology and video games and desire. Google Now is a predictive application, right? It means it's like Spotify, like other things, Shopify, which basically learns from your history what you're likely to want, and then tells you before you've even realized you want it, what it is that you want. Okay, that's how the predictive technology works on the level of desire. But the problem is, that's only the first step. Right? The app says it's designed to work out exactly what you want and then make it easy for you to get that. But in actual fact, the companies are gradually editing the desire of the user in a way which suits them. When I was giving a talk in Hangzhou about how evil WeChat was, and I was approached by some guys from Alibaba who said, "Oh, you don't like WeChat? You probably like us." Right? I said, "No, it doesn't work like that. I hate you both. It's just, you're the same to me." Anyway, they took me to this Alibaba cloud town in Hangzhou. They gave me this lovely T-shirt, and which I wear ironically only. And they showed me this car with co-created by Rover and Alibaba. It's a Rover car with an Alibaba drone attached. And the car syncs up with your smartphone, and the feature that the Alibaba spokesman was most proud of is this. The car knows when you're hungry and what kind of food will be most satisfying to you. Okay, now this seems quirky and innocent, okay, but for me it indicates the horrible dystopia in which we now live. Because the project of Alibaba is to work out your patterns. For instance, you like sushi on a Tuesday at 5 p.m, but you may not have realized that yourself. But the car knows, right? And then at 4:50 it says, how about sushi? And you think, yeah, that is what I want, And it tells you, instead of going to that sushi restaurant you've been going to the last 3 months, Why don't you try this one where you can use Alipay and we get commission and so on, right? So that's the second step of the predictive application in the smart city to come, right? First of all, they work out what you want. That sounds okay, still scary, but the really dangerous part becomes when your desires are edited slightly to be of benefit to those corporations, okay? So you're becoming increasingly a useful capitalist subject in a perfectly streamlined smart city where your actual desires are being gradually changed to suit those huge corporations which are increasingly powerful and have increasingly close connections to the states as well. Quick remark about how that relates to the East and the West. I mean, I think that WeChat has some really very serious issues in this regard as well. But I would say that the Western technology is just slightly ahead in this regard. Like in the West, we love to report on Chinese tech developments as if they're like this dystopian evil that is not with us in the West. But on this level, this stuff is really ahead in some of the Western applications where predictive and editing desire is crucial. Okay, so that explores how I think video games and tech culture at the moment is interested in transforming desire as we move forward into the future. Now, I would like to talk in the second part, just the last part of the talk, about why this is a problem or an issue from a kind of political perspective. Okay, so far I've just explained that we're in a culture, and I think video games embody it, where these technologies don't just give you what they want. They actually transform gradually what it is that you do want, and they do so in the service of corporations, states, and political situations, is my view, and I'm now going to kind of explore that a bit more. Okay, so yes, the question is this: if this new technology is transforming our desire, for whom is it doing that? Right? Now, one thing is that people on the, let's say, what we could call the right wing, the political right wing, I understand those terms are tricky, but what we could call the political right wing are really making use of this kind of technology in a way that people on the, say, progressive side or left wing side are not. We have much more, I mean, let me give you one example from the dating sphere, the Icon, the new smart condom. You put this smart condom on and it monitors your sex life, syncs it up with your smartphone, and so on. And you get to get your sexual skills recorded, and you can even get a ranking, you know. So this is a perfect example of how the gamification of love has become real. But the problem is that these things are very much associated with a kind of right-wing, patriarchal, misogynistic culture. Actually, the advert for the original advert for Icon almost made out like it was feminist by saying, well, you know, men are going to have to live up to this judgment of the smart condom and actually improve as lovers, right? So they claimed. But it was clear, even before the product was released, that this was going to serve a kind of bro culture of men comparing their sexual prowess, right? A kind of gamification of love thing. Another good example of that is dating sites like Trump.dating, which brings together people who support Donald Trump with each other so that they can just fall in love with each other. You know, that shows you three things: technology, politics, and love have become inseparable. Or when you see something like Trump.dating even existing. There's even something called the Atlasosphere, which is for fans of Ayn Rand, the right-wing philosopher, so that if you're only willing to date another fan of Ayn Rand, you can do that. Right? You don't see those things on the left. You've also got people like Emil Kierkegaard, a Danish alt-right guy, who mines the data from OkCupid in order to prove a kind of eugenics. Right? He mines the data from OkCupid to prove that white people only like white people, and Asian people only like Asian people, and therefore we should all stay in our races. Right, so for me, this is a really shocking moment where you're realizing that the whole history of technology and dating has been heading down what I would call a right-wing path. Because for years, dating sites and things like, and also video games that I will talk a bit more about, are encouraging us to see in the other what we are ourselves. Right? For example, the example of Replica, which I gave, the application is designed to provide you with exactly what you are. Using only your data, it becomes your friend. Likewise, online dating and its whole history has been based on pairing up people with the same interests. right? VR girlfriends are based on giving the user exactly what they need, basically reflecting the narcissism of the user in the other person. Right, so now we're reaching a point where we can see that for the last 20 years, technology has become increasingly prevalent in the sphere of love and desire, and it's been doing so in a way which is now serving what we think of as the right wing. And I think that's a very dangerous situation that we find ourselves in. And I'd like to finish by mentioning a couple of other things. I think this also embodies a kind of crisis for what I would call the left. I think that I recently wrote in the Guardian article saying video games are right wing, and another one saying that love is right wing. I can see that those are kind of provocative titles, but they're based on what I've tried to explore today. And I had two groups of people criticise me. The first is the horrible alt-right troll communities, you know, on things like Reddit and 4chan, who just basically throw abuse at me because I'm like on the left. That's fine, I can handle that bit. The other criticism was from the people who make all this technology. This one really fascinates me more. A lot of people who make video games and who make dating programs would contact me and say, "Oh, you're an idiot. I made that game and I'm left wing. You must be wrong, because I would never make a game that would be, you know, going to the right wing or going down that dangerous route." And you know, that I think shows us the situation we've got. When Mark Zuckerberg was in front of the Senate, like 2 weeks ago, some grumpy Republicans said to him, you know, "Didn't you fire Palmer Luckey, the Oculus guy, for being right-wing? You know, you're biased in favour of Democrat people," right? And Zuckerberg says, "Yeah, as we all know, Silicon Valley is extremely left-wing, and we actually need to make sure we're fair to the right in future." Okay, nothing could be further from the truth than that, and I think these 2 points really encapsulate the situation we've got. We've got people on the right and far right. They believe that the left is dominant in culture. Right? That is what Gamergate was about in 2014. Those Gamergate right-wingers, they said that the left, video games have become left-wing propaganda. The left is dominant and the right is underrepresented. Okay? That's what they think on the right. You come over into the middle, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Silicon Valley people, they believe the same, but they think they are the left-wing people who are dominant in culture. So we've got a situation where the right thinks the left is dominant, the liberals, who are actually dominant, think that they are the left and are dominant, and you've got actually no one on the left at all in these spheres of technology and gaming. Right? So that, and this illusion, which is sustained by the right and what we would call maybe the liberal or centrism of Silicon Valley, if you can even call it that, which is belief that this illusion that is restricting the left from actually having a say in video games and in technology, new technologies of data. So, as a last point, I want to be really clear that I don't think video games are evil or bad, right, or inherently or necessarily right-wing. I don't think online dating is bad or necessarily patriarchal or masculine or right-wing, right? But I think the situation we have at the moment is that we don't have enough progressive, right? I mean, progressive people, people on the left, who are actively involved in the production and creation of new technologies in video games, but also in AI, also in sphere of relationships, and in Silicon Valley in a broader and more general sense as well. So what I'm calling for is not that we criticise, say, dating online or video games themselves, but that we just need to really realise the situation that we've got an overrepresented right, prevalent on the online channel boards, very vocal, very loud, all over the media, getting in the news all the time. And then we've got a centrist, maybe, group of Silicon Valley tech giants who believe themselves to be on the left but aren't. And we've got no one on the progressive side. And I just think I really want to finish with a kind of call to anyone who's interested in technology in any way, whether you make it, write it, or write about it. You know, it's now so much easier now to get involved in tech production, tech development, and I think what's really missing in the sphere of technology is a progressive voice, and we need to kind of fight for that and make sure that we shape the future of technology, the future of gaming, in a way which won't lead down these kind of dangerous paths, which I hope to have kind of identified in brief. Thank you very much for listening.